The law of love, the law of God, the law of life is one of liberty and not one of bondage. Whenever we are conscious of God or pure spirit, we are made free. As our thought is opened and we behold the image of eternity within ourselves, we are changed by this image into a newness of life. Try to sense the infinite life around and within you. This life is already fully expressed and complete. This life is your life now, and the life of all that you do, say, or think. And going deeper within, I gently invite you to contemplate this. I meditate upon this life, and my whole being flows into life and becomes one with it. I feel the presence of the divine flowing right now through everything that is here, everyone that is here, flowing throughout and beyond this structure into the world, flowing into every living thing. And everything is alive. Everything lives. This is God in action. God as movement. God, the all-powerful, omniscient, omnipresent, beautiful perfection of love, giving life and birthing new ideas and dreams throughout the whole world. I know that today, here, at the Om Center for Spiritual Living, dreams are born and fulfilled. It is God in action. It is God as life, God expressing itself. I give thanks for all who are present, in person, online, around the world. As they dream and sleep, it is God as love flowing. I am grateful for the technology that connects us. Thankful for the skilled, wonderful talents of our sound technician, Martin. Thankful for the presence and what's to come flowing as love and light from our guest speaker, Daniel Nahmod. I am grateful for the presence of each one here, Reverend Suzette, and all the beautiful people who are here present and unified as one. This community lives to love and to share light and to grow, always with God in action as love and light. And so I am grateful. I call it good and very good, and together we say, and so it is. All right. It is my great pleasure and distinct pleasure to introduce and to welcome back Daniel Nahmod. Please, welcome.
Who managed that high-pitched sound? Who just made that sound? That was impressive. I should talk to the mic, sorry. I have for somebody who's been singing for a living for 25 years, I have just about the least sexy music career anyone's ever had. You know, it's just like, this is what I do. I dress like I'm, you know, kind of it's casual Friday in some office, and I sing songs that I mean, and I share how I'm feeling, and, you know, it's just thoughts about life and so on. And that little scream made me remember a moment the closest I ever came to feeling like a rock star probably in my entire life. There are really only two moments I've ever felt like a rock star, and one of them was I was singing for a Catholic girls' school. And there were like 200 or 300 girls there in the auditorium for what do you call it? They had not a field trip. What's an assembly? They had a school assembly, and I was the guy, and I sang songs. And in between songs, the girls like screamed like I was a pop star. I have no idea why. I certainly didn't egg it on, and didn't even know what to do about it. But it did make me blush, and it did make me feel like a rock star for a second. And the only other moment I ever had feeling like a rock star was I was in Tucson with my wife and two of our close friends. Her close friend lives in Tucson with a husband and wife, and we went to a restaurant / bar that had karaoke. And for whatever reason, I signed up for karaoke, and I sang, "Oh my love," and I just was feeling the mojo, man. And it's in the original key, this track, and it's very high and very fun. And I had everything I needed that day to sing the hell out of that song, and the place erupted screaming like I was a rock star. And I went back to their house with Melina. I'm like, I have been performing for audiences thousands of times. I have never felt so much like a rock star as when I need, everybody, it was like that. And all that from that little whoop you reminded me. And no, you don't need to. I don't encourage it. But clearly it makes a monster out of me. It's only happened twice, and I'm still thinking about it 20 years later. But in fact, as it turns out, that is not totally unrelated to what I thought I would. Something about this is a sweet little room, don't you think? I mean, yes. I enjoy coming into this sweet little room. Maybe it's Suzette. Maybe it's I get a warm welcome whenever I come, and it feels cozy. And I always start thinking about feelings in a way. I like when I come in here. So I think I might poke and prod you a little bit today. That's kind of my intention. So we approach the holidays, which I think has 2 or 3 automatic responses. One is, woohoo. Another is, oh, Another is, checking bank balances and making lists. And for some people, it's how lonely am I going to be this holiday, or who am I going to miss this holiday? Who's gone now that I can't see? For some, it's, do I have any plans? I mean, really, there's a whole gamut of feelings. What kind of loser am I if I don't have a dinner plan, or am I not going to a party, or you know what I mean? I mean, it's a wide range. It's a series of expectations and cultural pressures and associations that people have, so my intention here for just a few minutes here is to summon up maybe a couple of feelings for myself and for you that you may not have realized you were having, or that may be helpful or interesting or growthful, over the next few weeks, if that makes sense. Like I said, a little poking and prodding. We'll see what happens. And obviously what happens for you is up to you. But we'll start with this little song. It was in tune 20 minutes ago. The good news is I've had a cold for 2 weeks, so I can barely hear, so I can't tell if it's in tune. Sounds great to me. Man, it hurts sometimes to live this life. Some days I'd rather run and hide. Maybe then the pain would hide as well. Maybe then I could protect myself. But who's gonna win? Is that really living? Oh, I wish I didn't know that the answer is no. Nobody would win. 'Cause I could close my eyes and pretend I don't see. I could close my mind and pretend that I'm free. But my soul knows the truth. Life means stepping back in. I'm gonna open my heart again. Man, it hurts sometimes when I've done wrong. Some days I'd rather just move on. Maybe then I wouldn't have to cry. Maybe then I could protect my pride. But who's gonna win? Is that really loving? Oh, I wish I didn't know that the answer is no, nobody would win. Yeah, I could close my eyes and pretend I don't see. I could close my mind and pretend that I'm free. But my soul knows the truth. Life means stepping back in. I'm gonna open my heart. I could close my eyes and pretend I don't see. I could close my mind and pretend that I'm free. But my soul knows the truth, that life means stepping back in. I'm gonna open my heart again. Open my heart again. I produced an album for this. It was the first time I ever produced an album for somebody else. Producing means like she had songs, but she didn't know how to record them, didn't know what instruments to put, or whom to hire to play, or what studio to go to, or whether to put background vocals here and there. It's like a, if that makes sense. That's what a music producer does. Okay, so she was the first person who ever called and said, "Would you produce my album? I have songs, but I don't know what to do with them." And it was super fun, and the result was lovely because she was lovely and her voice was great and everything. And then when she finished, she said, "Okay, now I'm going to go out and perform. I've heard it before. I want to do what you do for a living." This is what people say to me. I want to do what you do for a living. I'm like, okay, good luck with that. Have fun. I'm not sure I make a living, but okay, all right. Well, let's assume I do. And so she called me, I don't know, a month or two later and said, "I got a gig. It's in Phoenix. I'm on my way. I'm very excited." I'm like, great. And she had gotten the album from the manufacturer. This is in the days of, bulk quantities of CDs at the time. I used to order thousands of CDs at a time, and so she had ordered her first 1,000 CDs, and she had booked her gig, and I'll never forget the phone call I got the day that she had this gig. It was a Sunday afternoon, and the phone rang. I picked up the phone, and she said, "Your job is so hard." I said, "Why? What do you mean?" She said, "Well, it took a month to get in touch with the music director for this church, and then we booked it, and I booked the flight, and the cost of the flight was not really actually even covered by the pay that they could afford, and I packed for 2 days and prepared signs and table displays and loaded up my suitcase and checked it to Phoenix. And when I got to Phoenix, my bag didn't come off the plane, and I had to wait 3 hours at the airport for the bag to come. And then when I showed up at the performance, there was an unusual squall in Phoenix, so they had to move my table out from under where it normally would be to under a shelter where no one could see it. And then when I showed up for the performance, the microphone went out halfway through one of my songs, and and I sang pretty well, and then there was like a half hour of stuff after my songs, and then when I came outside to stand at the table, it was soaked, and my table was out of sight. And she said, I mean, if I remember correctly, this was years ago, but if I remember, she said I sold 4 CDs, and I got on a plane and went home. Your job is so hard. This is what she told me. Now, so I received that in several ways. First of all, obviously, I wanted her to have a big win. But the other thing that I couldn't help but take from that phone call was, you're right. Thanks for the reminder. And my wife notices. I don't notice. By the way, this is not a complaint session. I'm just talking about my own personal experience here. And there's a reason I'm just telling this little story. But you're right. You're right. There are a lot of, this is the fun part and the easy part. Almost everything else about it is a job. It's hard. It's hard. And very uncertain. The uncertainty is actually, like, if I was to write the job description, that'd be the first thing I'd put on the job description of a full-time singer-songwriter is good luck knowing what the hell you're doing a month from now, or how your bills will be paid next February, or whatever. It's like uncertainty is the first thing on the list as a job description. It just is. It's a nature of it's an entrepreneur's life in any setting, really. Anyway, so that reminder was really powerful, and this was years ago, and I've never actually unremembered from that phone call. And it gave me just 20% more appreciation, not all the time, but here and there, it gave me a little bit more appreciation for the effort that I put in, and the storms I weather to do the job. This job, we'll call it a job, So, as I said, I wanted to poke and prod a little bit. And my question for you then is, what is it that you're doing that you've forgotten is actually hard and or impressive? That you might get that phone call one day and say, oh my God, how did you knit all these sweaters again? Or how did you raise such a happy child? Or how did you end up paying off your house? Or what did you do I remember when all these hypotheticals. I remember when you went through chemo and you still remembered my birthday. How the hell did you do that? I'm going through chemo now and my brain is such a fog. How did you manage that? So what kind of phone call would you get out of the blue that might remind you how much stronger you are than you may even notice on a daily basis? So we're heading towards the holidays, and it's kind of a theme for me for the morning in terms of we're in it's a life moment. It's a cultural moment when we arrive in November. We arrive for, like I said, for this month and a half of cultural expectations and socializing and family and memories and pressures and all sorts of things. And maybe it's worth taking a few seconds to acknowledge the things that you are doing, the things you have overcome, that you maybe stopped noticing, stopped appreciating about yourself. That it might take a phone call like that to remind you. Give yourself the phone call. Oh yeah, I had a hard year. 2 years ago, I was on the verge of bankruptcy. Now I've got my credit card paid off. Whatever it is. I had a moment with a friend who I thought I knew along these similar lines, which will lead me to another song. And the moment was we had an hour to talk privately, which we hadn't had, even though I've known her for probably 15 years. And she started telling me her life story. Now, this is somebody I thought I knew and really liked. I thought she was cool and confident and talented, great singer, successful business person with her husband. I mean, this is a winner of a person. Generous, friendly. You could hear her laughing across a room and you'd know it's her. And this is a keeper of a person. Then she tells me, and I don't remember why, that she had been adopted into an abusive family as a little girl and had gotten the hell out of that house as soon as she could as a teenager and had never looked back. and had built this life, this successful, generous, talented, cool, fun, friendly, warm, loving life. And I'm looking at her, I'm thinking, oh my God. See, I thought I was just looking at a normal, average, everyday, awesome person. And now I'm discovering that there's way more meat to these bones. Like it was already impressive, but we're a next level of admiration and appreciation. So along the same lines of what is it you are currently weathering or have come through, what is it you do often even that you stop noticing the courage it took to get started? You stop noticing how much you had to overcome just to arrive where you are today. And it's not intended as a pep talk. I'm really asking, because what that friend talking to me made me realize, or kind of gradually realize, is that if not everybody, pretty close to everybody, I'm thinking, could tell a story right now in this room that would break the rest of our hearts and raise our level of admiration for you or you or you exponentially, for us to simply know where you came from to get where you are. Very, very few people have truly, deeply, consistently easy lives. I mean, very, very few. You could even argue, I imagine, Suzette, you've probably I mean, of course, you speak about adversity and overcoming these things. I mean, what is an easy life anyway? You know, you start a business. If you have, if Walt Disney was on the verge of bankruptcy, if I remember correctly, he actually mortgaged his home to finish Snow White, because Bank of America, beloved Bank of America, was sick of loaning him money. He risked everything, and he was on the he was mocked, and he was ridiculed, and he was considered a failure until Snow White came out, right? So would he have succeeded the way he did if he hadn't been mocked and ridiculed and failed multiple times and had to sign on the dotted line to put his home up for a mortgage? I'm thinking no. If you think, Chris Rock is some of you know, absolute genius stand-up comic. And he talks about, he's joking, but he's also serious. He's like, all this stuff about stopping bullying in school. He says, do you think Bill Gates would be a billionaire if he hadn't been bullied? It's the best thing that ever happened to him. It's a joke, but only kinda. So the stuff that you and I are made of, the stories we're made of, a lot of it is behind the scenes, and a lot of it is unspoken. A lot of it is forgotten. The things that I think about, the building materials in a home. We can see the paint, we can see the rug, we can see the fabric on the chairs, but we can't see the foam underneath the fabric. But does the quality of the foam impact the quality of the chair? 100%. We can see the drywall is well taped. It's like it's a clean line. I can just see a little line there. Right, this is just because I'm renovating a home, right? So it looks like it's a well-made wall. But when there's a party going on in the suite next door, that's when you find out how well it was actually built. You find out whether there was insulation put in there, even if they didn't need to by code. You find out whether they used half-inch drywall or 5/8" drywall, which makes a difference in sound insulation. You find out whether they use soundproofing insulation. None of these things you can see. You find out whether they use premium lumber or cheapest possible lumber when there's a storm, when there's a flood, when there's a shimmy in the ground, a little earthquake. You find out what the house was made of. You and I have a lot of stuff behind our walls. We're built of stuff that we can't see. I think about things that I said or didn't say, did or didn't do for Jude when he was a baby, or that Melina did. Did we hold him or did we not? Did we make eye contact or did we not? Did we respect him when he cried? Did we laugh at him when he got mad? Or did we heed it and honor it? Those are things he doesn't remember, and neither do we, but he's built of those moments. We are built of these moments, and the crappy part about it is, of course, we cannot remember nearly any of them. All we can see is the result, which is usually ugly, let's face it. Because the people who were either stepping in or closing off, the people who were either holding us or rejecting us, those people were screwed up to begin with too. And they were raised by people who were, it just goes on and on and on. The cycles of not just abuse in the larger sense, but the cycle of happiness, the cycle of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, these cycles are very slowly worn away. It's not often that one generation has a massive breakthrough and raises its children completely differently than its parents did. You know what I mean? I've done my best. I've been to therapy, and I take as much responsibility as I possibly can, but I get it wrong every day with Jude, doing my very best. What I would consider to be a post-therapy best. I'm not saying I couldn't use more, but I had a great therapist and went through I had my own midlife crisis already, for God's sake. I should have cleared out some of the crap that I've still got. I had my midlife crisis. I was 27. Hopefully not a midlife. I'm 53, so that would be bad. You know what I'm saying? So we are made of this stuff, and we react the way we're going to react, and we don't always understand the way we react. We don't know the stuff we're actually made of. It's behind the walls. You find out in an earthquake whether the foundation was made to code, whether they used the good rebar or the cheap stuff. That's when you find out. I always used to say in dating, it's like, you want to find out how you were parented, have a kid. You want to find out how your parents got along, date somebody. And all of a sudden you see it come up. Everything you do is an echo of what you watched. Sometimes a reaction, sometimes a impersonation. We are subject to these things. Can't help it. So, as I said 20 minutes ago, this friend telling me this story and gave me this thought that any one of us is a survivor at a level that the rest of us really couldn't imagine, because most conversations in most days are, how's it going? Great. How you doing? Fantastic. Nice day. Good. Yeah, everything's wonderful. Oh, love it. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, thank you. That's great. Great to see you. Bye. And meanwhile, not a real word was spoken, and I understand why. Because who has the time? And, life gets exhausting if you're doing a lot of poking. I'm poking and prodding here for 20 minutes, a half hour. But generally speaking, I would rather watch TV, You know what I mean? I'd rather watch. Really, it's tiring. It's tiring to lay. I lay bare myself when I'm singing a song, and I lay bare when I'm writing it. The rest of the time, no, not so much. It's more, Snickers bars and Adam Sandler movies and scratching the dog's belly and hanging out with my boy. It's not deep stuff. Deep stuff is exhausting. But when that friend told me that story, and I started thinking about how many people come through, how much, just to arrive where they are with a strength that is well concealed. It goes back to my original question to you, which is, what is it you're doing on a daily basis? What is it you've arrived to be that, if you're really honest with yourself in the best possible sense, took a lot to get there? You stopped even noticing. You certainly stopped talking about it. But it's still true. My wife is that. My wife is a survivor. 5 kids raised by a single dad on disability most of his life, medical disability. Heart problems, leukemia. He struggled. He struggled financially to feed 5 kids. He struggled with a wife, the mother of the kids, that was gone, and unsuccessful marriages after that. And they had it hard. They did. Meanwhile, you talk to my wife now and you think, what a cool, classy, beautiful, talented. You look at her jewelry she made. This is not somebody raised to be an artist, not somebody to be a beautiful, loving mother that she is. She had never had a mother. She's making it up as she goes along, and primo job at it. You know what I'm saying? But you wouldn't know it from talking to her. She looks like a truly privileged person. And she would tell you she is now, but she wasn't. 1 chicken and a pound of beans is what her dad used to get at the grocery store. He'd cook it, and they'd eat it for the rest of the week, right? So what are you made of that nobody can see? It's almost certainly much more than anyone in this room realizes, even if you're sitting next to somebody who loves you and knows you well. So that friend inspired this. I've never understood how you turned out so good with all that you've had to endure. No one expected you to make the best of you. The deck stacked against you for sure. The more that I learn, the more I admire how you never got burned being forged in the fire. Yeah, an ordinary mortal would have quit by now. With a life like a field full of mines. You're human, I know, made of muscle and bone, but you must have steel in your spine. You never talk about when you first figured out that you'd have to go it alone. It breaks my heart to picture you, a child hiding out of view, so young to fight on your own. But still here you stand, and still here you are, igniting the world with your luminous heart. Yeah, an ordinary mortal would have quit by now. With a life like a field full of mines. You're human, I know, made of muscle and bone, but you must have steel in your spine, and that would explain how you never admit any pain. So let me just say that child has a lot to be proud of, but no longer needs to keep the world at bay. If you were mortal, you'd have quit by now. You've been counted out so many times. You're human like me. You can bruise, you can bleed, but you must have steel in your spine. Yeah, a mortal would have quit by now, but your light was determined to shine. There's so much more than they see, a superhero to me. You must have steel in your spine. You must have steel in your spine. Whoa, oh, oh. Now, the only other subject. Oh, thanks. That's right. Ooh, got a little. The only other subject I really wanted to raise today, because I am famous in my own mind for making services way too long, and I'm determined not to do that. But I did want to also, just for the sake of making in case it's helpful, that's kind of the whole goal here, right? In case it's helpful, just to raise for you the question of what are your associations with the holidays that are coming up? Like, whom do you think of when I say Thanksgiving dinner? Do you think of somebody? Is there a house you think of? A certain plate of food? Is there a feeling? And the same question applies to Hanukkah or to Christmas, whatever you celebrate. How do those holidays actually feel to you? You know, in the vein of parents who react without knowing why they're reacting, and you know, so many feelings and so much wiring behind the walls that is operating on us daily. You know, my sort of intention or pursuit a lot of the time is to just simply make the feelings and thoughts and wiring conscious instead of unconscious. That's all. To be aware of it, to own it, to notice it, to notice it. So for me, for example, Thanksgiving's coming up in 4 days. And Thanksgiving, there were two holidays in my upbringing, my childhood, that were truly important and, you know, sacred, I guess is the word. I don't know. Thanksgiving and Pesach, Passover. Grew up in a Jewish home, of course, and those two holidays, we used to go to my bubby's house in Chicago, and the entire family would gather. There was an adult table, and there was a kid table. The kid table was a folding table in the living room in my bubby's house in Chicago, where the only house they ever lived in since emigrating I've talked about my bubby and Zadie here, I think, in the past. So just they emigrated 49 or 50 or 51, something like that, with my mom, who was a little girl and cute as a button, looked just like Shirley Temple in the pictures. My uncle Chaim, who's now 70-something, who was just a baby boy, born in Berlin in the DP camp there, and their third child, Harriet, born in America, and absolutely an American child, rebellious and, you know, snotty from all reports, you know, as a kid, and there was Sonia was their oldest child, my mom, Shirley Temple, who had 3 boys. So the 3 boys, little boys, used to come over. I used to play on the little piano, little recitals for my bubby at the time as a little boy, and it was very festive. And my bubby was an unschooled, brilliant chef of the old world Jewish Polish foods. She made them all from scratch. Kishki and kugel, and I can still taste it. Haven't tasted her cooking. She died in 1987. I was graduating high school when she died, 1988. And I can still remember the taste of the stuffing that she used to make. And the other thing about the family gatherings, actually, that was, at least in my particular case, for my family, was that there was always a tinge of, they were absolutely immigrants, and they were heartbroken immigrants. Even though I was too young to know any details, they were Holocaust surviving immigrants, and there were 3 or 4 different couples that we thought of as the old people, as the boys, you know, we thought of them as the old people, at the old people's table, and they weren't actually related, several of those couples, but they were the only people who they knew who had survived the Holocaust with each other. So when they arrived in Chicago, they were it. They were each other's family. So they gathered at the table, and they played a card game called Kaluki, which I don't know anything about, except they were very focused on it. And the men drank hard liquor sometimes, and the women sipped coffee. And they sat around that big table that my bubby never took the vinyl protector. She never took it off her couch, and she never took it off the dining room table, I remember. And it was a lovely little old, you know, modest home. Probably not old at the time. Actually, feels like it was at the time, but it probably wasn't. And they were living in America, and they were celebrating Thanksgiving. And my bubby would cook these masterpiece meals without recipes, probably. She never wrote them down, and nobody can cook them anymore. So these are my associations. Is Thanksgiving and Pesach had a similar feel to it. The same old people at the same table. Thanksgiving and Pesach. And when my bubby died, it was clear, even to me at 18, that nobody was going to pick up the mantle of that. That was the end of those meals. And it was. It was the end of those meals. Her husband, my grandfather, outlived her a couple of years. But he had a stroke, and he was not a cook, and there was nothing like that ever again. Nothing like it ever again. When the family would gather, it was a smaller family. It was no longer those couples that had known each other because either they'd passed away or they'd had their own kids, and it dispersed. Is this ringing any memories for you about what Thanksgiving has meant for you in your life? That's kind of the reason I'm sharing it. And so we can, and maybe it's true about life in general, we can hurdle through it. Now, I don't mean hurdle with a D. I mean with a T. We can race through it. Absolutely. That's our option. But the whole experience, and I'm a hypocrite to talk about it, but I'm doing my best. I do my best when I can think of it. The whole experience is richer and lovelier and more true when we can take a breath and remember the feelings we're actually having. Notice them. Rather than just do this, oh God, gifts, or, I love Christmas. Why do you love Christmas? What's the association? Is there a certain person who would hug you on Christmas every year? I still remember the way my bubby would greet us at the door when we'd sleep over, when we'd show up for those dinners. She'd greet us at the door in a big smock that she made herself. She was a heavy woman, and she'd made all her own clothes, brilliant seamstress, and she would do this. Here we are. And she would give us a hug, right? So what is Christmas? My wife, Melina, still, I mean, her father died 1 year before I met her. I never met him. His body gave out, finally, after a lot of hardship with it. And she still tears up thinking about him. Every so often, she'll look at Jude, who's our boy's now 11 and now taller than my mom. And he's getting there. He's a little bit over 5 feet. And when that little shit is taller than me, we're going to have a problem. I told him, stop eating hamburgers. Sorry to swear. Stop eating hamburgers. You are not allowed to get taller than me. But I think he's headed way above my head, But she still tears up looking at him every so often, thinks of what her dad would have felt looking at his grandson, So we have a Thanksgiving dinner this year with Melina's brother and sister-in-law and their little girl. And Jude has a little cousin. And he's a big brother to her, and she's tiny and adorable. And so that's that. I don't know if it's a new tradition. It's hard to make traditions. It's hard to make old friends. It takes time. There's no fast tracking these things really, and it takes consistency. So as you approach these holidays, what feeling do you want to have? What feeling do you miss? What feeling is gone? It's just worth noticing. Not necessarily, that standard guy thing of trying to fix every problem. It's just kind of like this. I don't know if it's a guy thing or just a masculine thing. Is to just, as soon as you hear it, I'll take care of that. Let me handle that. And you don't have to have that reaction to when you notice something is gone. It can simply be, I loved that. I loved that feeling. Things begin and things end. Everything does. But to notice it is to make the entire experience more meaningful and more true. Just like a parent noticing how they're actually feeling makes their parenting that much better. Rather than just reacting and, in my case, kicking myself in bed later saying, why did I say no to reading him a book? Why? It was 8:20, so he goes to sleep 15 minutes later. Why? Why would I do that? And I think probably my parents would have said no. It was programming, and I gave into it. You know what I mean? I didn't slow it down and notice that I don't need to say no. I'm not insulting my parents this way. I'm just saying they were more no parents than yes parents. They just were. As I think as boys, they were disciplined and focused and more interested in whether we were doing our homework than whether we were happy. You know, there's a phrase that I think it's from a Bob Dylan song. Happy is a yuppie word. You know, they were not yuppies. My parents were focused and disciplined. So I get caught in that too. Now with Jude, I get caught in that in the holidays, being functional and practical instead of giving in to, because there is magic in a holiday when you allow it. You don't have to allow it though. The movies are filled with Grinches. They are. We all know. It's an easy laugh line to say. I'm sure no one in this room is chronically cranky, right? But of course nobody is. But we know those people who are chronically cranky, who stopped noticing that they are years ago probably. And if we knew their story, we'd understand why they are. It's not about like making it great, but it is about compassion and empathy and understanding for yourself or for somebody around you. Somebody who can't enjoy themselves anymore. We know those people too. Somebody who manages to take the greatest vacation and turn it into a disaster story. Oh, it was great until I broke my foot, or there's always a story. We all know that like I said, I'm sure no one in here is a drama king or queen, but to me, and it really is. And I'll just end with this thought, and just there's no conclusion to this sort of discussion. It's just about making feelings conscious instead of unconscious, expectations conscious versus unconscious, memories conscious versus unconscious. We enter especially, it's like, there are milestone moments in a year and in a life, and in those moments, like I say about, you want to find out how your parents got along, date somebody. You want to find out what your childhood was like, celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah. You'll find out. You'll find out how, whether your parents smiled through it, or, that movie, I'd never seen the movie before Melina showed it to me. Is it called A Christmas Story? With the cranky dad who's hilarious and the mom who's super sweet and the kids who are always getting into trouble. You'll find out. You find out, if you do it unconsciously, you find out what you were made of. But it is possible to notice and slow down the cycle and interrupt the programming and pay attention to it, and sometimes intervene, sometimes make a change. But at the very least, be aware and own it and forgive it in other people. To realize that the reason you're sad today is because of that Thanksgiving you used to have, that you'd forgotten how good it felt. And therefore there's a tinge of disappointment. And that's okay, that's life. But to have that thought consciously is to not let it ruin your day. Unconsciously, it changes everything. It makes you into the dad in that movie. Disappointment, frustration, or joy. That's it. That's all I have to say today. I hope that was interesting for you to think about.